back to another episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story coming from the Wall Street Journal. We know that the Big Beautiful Bill passed, but we didn't know about everything that was in it. And now there's something that came out that may be exciting for Republicans going into the future, a little bit disappointing for some Democrats. We'll get into all of it. It's all about school choice. And of course, we went today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. Now, there's enough rambling from me. Let's jump into our daily debate. School choice has always been super controversial. And if there's any way that you would prefer that it be funded, would you be okay with it being exported, or at least the task of giving out the grants? If that's something that falls outside the scope and purview of the government, rather institutions, private institutions, or nonprofit institutions. I want to know your opinion. Throw it down there in the comment section. Maybe you're opposed altogether. Maybe your hesitation was the government doing it. I want to know. Throw me a simple few-word comment so I can see what everybody thinks on the matter. But hey, that's enough with that. Let's actually get to our article from the Wall Street Journal. Headline reads, Democrats' School Choice Dilemma. It is an opinion piece by Michael J. Petrelli. So the Big Beautiful Bill, it was so many different things to so many different people. There were so many different layers thrown in there. We, as the American populace, and some of the people voting for it, probably didn't know every single fold and every single nuance that was going on here. Well, hey, this little slice, though I was against the Big Beautiful Bill, and what I mean by that is first off, using the reconciliation process in order to get what you want. For years we criticized the Republicans, and we, the populace, criticized the Democrats for simply going out and saying, nope, we are going to just have a simple majority in the Senate. We're going to get past the 60-vote threshold by making it a budget reconciliation bill. And now the Republicans are doing the exact same thing when they're in dire straits in order to get an agenda piece passed. The argument should go that either you have to go across the aisle, you have to work with both sides in order to get something like that passed to meet the 60% threshold, or you have to not do it. And I know that sounds harsh. I know that sounds like we're not trying to move forward, but the point of our process is it is slow. The point is that we are not meant to have one party rule. We are meant to have two parties, maybe even three, but I would say that the founders didn't necessarily want parties, but they outlined it in such a way that it was baked into the system that we have people who have two different opposing views on lots of issues, and they have to come together in order to solve it. So with that, let's actually get into what this section of the bill, this part that was slightly baked in there, is going to do and how it's going to go about it when it comes to enabling school choice across the nation. Quote, one of the first rules of partisan politics is to promote issues that unify your own coalition while dividing the other parties. That's why the Medicaid cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill are a gift to Democrats. Over the past 15 years, 40 states have opted for Medicaid expansion, including 20 that Trump won in 2024. Lots of Republican governors proved unwilling to turn down an offer that had Uncle Sam paying for 90% of the costs. Congressional Republicans have reversed much of Obamacare's Medicaid expansion and thereby handed Democrats an election issue. Important to know the context, and I think it's a interesting opposition, or how should I say, he's casting this as similar issues between the fact that they're stripping Obamacare funding versus what they are doing with school choice funding. Quote, with much less notice, the act created a school choice program that poses a headache for elected Democrats. It provides a dollar-for-dollar tax credit for individual taxpayers who donate up to $1,700 annually to scholarship-granting organizations, which give money to schools to cover private school tuition and other education expenses. End quote. Now, of course, the argument will always be, oh, well, hey, if it's down to a nonprofit, if it's down to these charitable organizations, how many of them are actually going to be used in their totality? How many people are actually going to be able to be funded to go to these different private schools? Effectively, are you not paying a baseline $1,700 tax tuition costs, because that's how much you should donate and to get a tax credit for to send your kid to a private school, or at least to put the money in these funds so that they can be dispersed across your children and others on top of other costs. All of these things are fair, but I think this issue strikes at the heart of whether or not and how government should be involved in the schooling system. And why do I say that? Because for the longest time, the argument has always been from Republicans in general, in the most general sense, that we need to have institutions that are strong and do not rely on the government. And this is exactly how I would have preferred to set up a school choice program. This is how I would have preferred to set up a lot of different programs, which is having a nonprofit or a different organization that can take contributions from people around the United States in order to disperse that money to best suit our society, the needs of our society, and prepare and help us move forward without necessarily heavy-handed government involvement. If you give your taxes voluntarily and you're not forced to do so, that is totally fine by me. You can choose to fund your government just as you can choose to fund these programs. Now, if you're forced to do so by a government, they are using the threat of force or the actual form of violence in the form of putting you away in jail or things of this nature. IRS enforcement agents come up banging on your door and arresting you in order to force you into a decision, in order to take away your free will, in order to limit your freedoms. Though, of course, we live in an ordered society that intentionally has rules in order to do that, these should not be one of them. These should not be ones that allow the system to prosper simply because you do not support the government that is trying to actively take your things. But hey, well, that's enough libertarian philosophy there for a little bit of time. This is a great solution to the school choice issue. You are voluntarily giving up your money. Now, should it be a government mandate necessarily? No. Though I think if there's going to be any way of going about it, the government having to be involved, because I literally just talked about how they have the monopoly on force, then this is it. Not necessarily saying you have to donate to these, not saying that you are mandated to actually start taking money from this for anything, or that certain states have to opt into it, but rather this is a system that establishes those funds, establishes those nonprofits that take on the money, and make sure that the citizens who donate to it get a relief in the form of a dollar for dollar tax cut. Now, tax credit. Let's be clear. You can already take money that you donate to a nonprofit, as long as it is a verified nonprofit with the 501c3 or any of the varying tax status. So you could already write that off. So it's not necessarily super important that they get a dollar for dollar tax credit, but it is something that I'm okay with, even though it is direct interference in the market, that I'm more okay with it because they have relatively good incentive programs, and there is a good incentive program, and they are trying to actively get it off the ground. In an ideal world, it is so self-sustaining in the future that the average citizen sees enough benefit in that nonprofit. They see their kid went through, maybe they send their kid to private school on some of these grants, and then those kids get out and they see the value of it, much like how students continue to give back to their alma mater. They continue to give money as an alumni. Maybe this sort of thing continues on in less government interference, less government options. We can eventually cut this tax credit. Once again, I think that's a long way down the road, but the author makes a great point, which is this is a lightning rod for Democrats, and it was very sneaky that Republicans put it in and basically made it an opt-in system. Democratic governors don't have to say that this hurts their bottom line, that they have to choose between public and private schools, because it's a completely optional choice of the citizens of any given location in order to participate in this nonprofit. And we'll see whether or not Democratic governors are willing to take up the mantle, or they're willing to take up this torch, if they're willing to be the bearer and go out into the public and say, this is why this is wrong, this is why this is a problem, these are the reasons that we can't have this here, especially when you're talking about a program that allows people to feel as though they're moving economically up the ladder. If you're able to send your kid to a private school, something that is aspirational for so many people, even maybe during their lifetime was aspirational for them, and you allow them to have this sense of economic mobility, as well as the actual fact that most private schools are better off. And when I say better off, better at preparing for tests, better at preparing for college, the general student population, this puts you on a relatively good track to have a child who could do better. Not that they're you're going to do better. Just because you go to a private school doesn't mean you're going to do better, period, full stop. You have the potential, and you have the connections, and you have the lane towards the best future for yourself and your family. So that is an interesting summation. It's interesting that they snuck it in there, that there wasn't much talk about it, but I'm sure the pro-choice lobby, the pro-school choice lobby was sitting there licking their lips saying, finally, we're getting something through on a national level. So with that, let's actually jump into our daily delight. This is a story that's meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day, and this one is cute. This comes from the Daily Bunny. You're both looking pretty guilty, bunnies, is the headline. And it is two guys hiding underneath the table next to a wicker basket. And mom goes on to describe, oh, well, yeah, hey, look at them. Why is my wicker basket broken, guys? What's going on? And they both have that look. Maybe we're personifying them or anthropomorphizing them a little bit, but they both have that look of, oh, no, it wasn't me. And honestly, it's just a great way to start the day with something a little funny, something a little adorable. Maybe you could pass around to some friends. So you can go read that article, or you can read the first article, the opinion piece. Both links will be in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes that come out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as well as 6 and 6, which is 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. It's international news, and that comes out on Tuesday and Thursday. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.